Salam and peace. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and you're watching Muslim Network TV on Galaxy 19 satellite, on Roku, on Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, a lot of social media, and we're always on our own website, which is muslimnetwork.tv. muslimnetwork.tv. Yesterday, I was reading Light Went Out. There was a storm. There was some light from the window coming, so I just picked up the closest book. And it was a book written by a physician who is also a fiction writer in Pakistan. And this seems to be all about the American wars and how Pakistanis feel about it. And it talks about a girl. Whenever skies are clear, sun is shining, she's afraid. She goes back in her home, does not want to go out, does not want to play. She plays only when it is cloudy. And the reason, of course, the fiction writer will write in her own way, is that whenever there are clear skies, there are drones which they cannot see, and they drop bomb. And one of that bomb killed her relatives. And this is a story of 70,000 plus people on the both sides of Pakistani border in Pakistan and Afghanistan. And when there is a cloudy day, it's a good day for them. They enjoy that day because then drones cannot see or drones don't bomb, or people who are launching these drones from Syracuse are going on vacation, whatever is the case. People live in fear. Does international law allow any country to use drone to kill anybody anywhere? Is it part of the international law of war? Is there some system? What is going on? And why it is, my grandson has a toy which is drawn. He's just playing with it. Why every killing machine turns into a toy? It normalizes these things, but what is this? Who is doing that? And I went on Amazon preparing for this show. You can buy, drones in $12, $20, and of course, hundreds of dollars and all of that. And then you can figure out where you can fly and have fun with it. Those kids around the world who just simply want to play in open air on a sunny day are afraid of those toys, the killing toys from America. It's sort of become a game, but it's not a game for a whole lot of people. And they are peacemakers of America. They speak up against it. They take actions against it. Many of them have been arrested many a time. And today we'll be spending an hour to understand what makes a person be a peacemaker, what makes a person stand up against something which is being done wrong right from our land. What makes a person take a risk of going to the prison system and being humiliated in that way? What makes a person a human being who feels for other human beings? And one such leader is Ed Kinane. Welcome, Ed Kinane, to Muslim Network TV.
Very glad to be here.
Thank you. For over 10 years, Ed Kinane, a longtime anti-militarism activist from Syracuse, New York, has been engaged in exposing Reaper drone assassination and terrorism. He is co-founder of the Upstate Drone Action Coalition, which has non-violently protested hundreds of times at Hancock Air Force Base near Syracuse, leading to scores of arrests, trials, and imprisonment. Kinane is author of Why We Persist and Becoming a Counter-Terrorist in Bending the Arc, Striving for Peace and Justice in the Age of Endless War. It's a book coming out this month from Sunny Press, New York. Well, Why you're protesting against drone? I mean, the 75th anniversary of atomic bomb, atomic bomb is more dangerous than drone, right?
I think it is, Iman. However, the weaponized drone, can be a trigger leading to the use of nuclear bombs. So on my scale of values, the nuclear issue is very high, as well as environmental disaster is very high. However, I live in Syracuse, New York, which is just almost, if I were younger, I'd be within walking distance of Hancock Air Base, which is the home of the 174th Attack Wing of the New York National Guard. And the New York National Guard's Attack Wing at Hancock Air Base trains weaponized drone pilots. And it claims to be in the air over Afghanistan 24/7. And my guess is, this is all classified information, is that it's probably also operating in Pakistan as well. Not to mention maybe over other countries.
Well, initially it used to also fly from Pakistan and bomb Pakistan also. I don't know if that's still the case, because there was an air base which was in the control of the United States. And Kathy Kelly herself was taken to a base within 15 miles to where Osama bin Laden was killed. Within 20 miles from there, a villager took Kathy Kelly to see an American base where he said that a lot of big containers arrive, and what is in there, we don't know. Unfortunately, that guy got arrested. Kathy Kelly told me later on, because he pointed out. But that was a known place because, what is his name? Who was presidential candidate in Senator Kerry, himself distributed relief supplies to earthquake victims from that area. That's within 20 miles. So there are different bases around where they're doing that. But National Guard, which you are saying are being trained to pilot the killer drones, National Guards are supposed to guard our nation, right? When they become the offensive line fighters?
Well, at Hancock Air Base, it's been for the last 10 years. Now, there are other weaponized drone bases besides Hancock Air Base. That's why I answered that question, carefully. We don't know if it's actually drones piloted from Hancock that are terrorizing Pakistan. It wouldn't surprise me in the least, but it's a very classified operation out there.
So they actually fly from here, or they control them?
That's kind of they're piloted remote control from Hancock. Actually, the signal goes from Hancock out to Nevada, to the base out there, and then it's relayed via satellite to Germany, and then from Germany onto the target country. This is done very quickly. It's very high tech. It's confusing. We think that it's flying from Hancock. No, it's not. But the signal is.
Yeah. So the piloting remote is based there. How far is that from Syracuse City?
Syracuse to Pakistan?
No, Syracuse to the base.
In Nevada. That would be about 2,000 miles to Nevada, but then many thousands of miles across the Atlantic by cable, I think it is, to Germany. And then from Germany, it goes on to Pakistan, Afghanistan, Somalia, Libya, wherever. A number of countries.
One of your placards says abolish weaponized drones, and drones fly, children die. Do you think people in America understand that drones kill children?
I'm afraid there's not a lot of understanding here in the United States about the consequences of drone warfare, what I call drone terrorism. We live in a pretty oblivious country, I'm afraid. We're caught up in distractions and consumption. A lot of us are co-opted. A lot of our careers depend upon, working in the weapons industry, which is, a major U.S. industry. It's just not the sort of thing that I think most U.S. people want to think about.
Well, maybe instead of just standing on the corner with clickers, maybe you need to become a movie producer, and then people will watch your movie and say, "Oh my God, children die from this."
Mm-hmm. Well, there are films out there that suggest that, certainly. I'm not the one to make a film, though, with my lack of technical skills, though I'd love to be a consultant on such a film.
So there are films which describe what happens?
Yeah. I don't have them ready in mind at the moment. I haven't seen one in several years.
No problem. But we'll love to, if you have somebody, let us know later on who has produced. Maybe we'll talk to them and show what it is like. Now, activists have been protesting drones for how long?
Well, our group, Upstate Drone Action, has been at it since 2010. Well, actually, Thanksgiving of 2009, several of us did a fast in downtown Syracuse for several days, opposing weaponized drones. But we've been kind of persisting at it for a decade now.
So are you seeing some results?
Are we seeing some results? It's very hard to judge results. It's the nature of things that certainly the military isn't going to acknowledge our impact. And also U.S. media, mainstream media, and also our local media are not particularly interested in the subject. In part, it's because Syracuse has become not only a drone, weaponized drone hub, but it's also becoming a commercial drone hub, which the local powers that be are hoping to make this a major hub for developing commercial drones, which of course interact with military drones. They cross-fertilize each other. Commercial drones, they have a lot of good uses. However, they also normalize and glamorize the use of drones, which of course have very serious military applications.
So who started it? Military started first, or the toy industry started first?
Did the military start first? Yes, the military actually had been using drones under Clinton, President Clinton. Drones were used. President Obama stepped up the use of drones. His successor, Mr. Trump, has exponentially increased the use of drones for weaponized purposes. They were used during drones actually can go back to the Germans in World War II. The V-2 rockets, in a sense, were drones.
Oh, okay. So drones are nothing a new phenomena.
Well, yes and no. I mean, that's really kind of digging into origins, but they really have come into their own here in the 21st century. Enormous amounts of research are going into developing drones as weaponry, but also for commercial purposes.
So drones essentially in the military application, killer drones and weaponized, but in commercial industry, and both are benefiting from each other, or is the military research benefiting the commercial aspect of it?
Oh, I think it goes both ways. It's cross-pollination, because the researchers and the scientists that develop the technology can go in and out of those spheres. And of course, by normalizing commercial drones, that gives a cover to the military drones, which is particularly troublesome here in the United States because these drones are coming home to roost. They're also doing surveillance here in the US. And so when you look, I've been at demonstrations where drones have been overhead. Now, presumably those are surveillance drones. But you don't know because there's so many different kinds of drones out there.
So who is operating them, the surveillance drones in the US?
Well, in this case, the ones we go out to Hancock Air Base every Tuesday afternoon at rush hour to hold our signs, drones fly, children die, that sort of thing. And we place ourselves right at the exit of the base when the base personnel are coming off duty for their shift. So we want them to see our signage. We never get to talk to them, but we hope to make them think. And we hope to make the people that come to pick them up at the end of a shift think about what's happening there, behind all the barbed wire. So we don't know what impact we're having on them.
Well, if one person, when he's pushing the trigger, rethinks and he stop, that's your impact. I mean, of course, you will not know that thing, but you're saying for surveillance. So we'll take a short break at this moment. When we come back, how drones are being used commercially, which sort of limit our ability to use our First Amendment rights in America. You're watching Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid. I'm talking with Ed Kinane. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and I'm talking with Ed Kinane about drones. And so you were saying that commercial are helping the killer drone and militarized drone are helping local. You also mentioned drones are being used in the US for surveillance purposes. Is surveillance of peace activists going on through this, or what is happening?
Well, yes. We presumably were surveilled when we've been out there at the base. This was, occasional. It's not every week that when we're out there. And also, I understand the recent civil resistance in Portland, Oregon, in recent weeks. There were reports of drones. Who knows where they came from? Were surveilling that unrest there.
So it could be the journalists also who are trying to give good photos and good images. So how it got into the toy industry, why it has become a toy, why each weapon is a toy in our country?
Well, there's the market for it. We love gadgets here in the United States. And of course, the Pentagon is very happy to get kids hooked on drones. And it's like get kids hooked on video games involving killing. I mean, the Pentagon is active in this kind of thing in trying to develop these things. They start with the kids very young. They desensitize them to killing. This is how you raise your military. You start early on. It's an industry here in the United States.
How many drone strikes do you think United States have launched in last 10, 15 years?
Oh, hundreds and hundreds. I mean, they're hard to count. They're clandestine. Some of them are we never know what Hancock Air Base is doing because it's classified. But it's not just Hancock Air Base. It's not just the Reaper drones, which it specializes in. There's a range of different kinds of drones, all sizes and shapes. some weaponized, some for surveillance, but it's also the other military services in the United States, Army, Navy, Air Force, and the CIA and other agencies. So it's a very complicated, hard to monitor, classified kind of operation. And then, of course, there's allies of the United States. The United States can sell drones to its allies, but the major exporter of drones is Israel. Israel has a booming drone industry, high tech, used for military purposes. I mean, they're really cutting edge.
So it means that once the US does something, everybody else does the same thing. I mean, when US were going around torturing in Abu Ghraib or North Carolina prisoners, I think torturers around the world were having a heyday, and they went around doing that as well. So do you think there is a world competition in drones that everybody, Israel and America selling them, but other countries now trying to encroach each other's spaces? Is it going to be another instrument of common warfare?
Well, I think drones are, the cutting edge of military technology, and there are major forces within U.S. and Israel in particular, but also China and other countries that are promoting the proliferation of drones. That was one of my major fears 10 years ago when we got started on this campaign, was that drones would proliferate and they would come home to roost. They'd be used here in the U.S. Other countries in self-defense would want to have drones as well. I'm not on top of the situation in Pakistan and India, but I presume both nations would have drones as well.
Well, if they're competing with building atomic bombs, it's not just the Amazon which want to deliver packages through drones. Somebody must be thinking of delivering deadly other type of atomic packages through drones as well.
It's plausible.
It's a very dangerous thing. And are there some international law? I mean, there were Geneva Convention 1 and 2. Is there a possibility of this, since war and terrorism unleash a very different phenomena, and people are breaking all sort of rules and coming up with new rules? Do you think there is a need for Geneva Convention 3, which or 4, I don't know what is the number currently, which talks about drone warfare, which talks about targeted killing, which talks about due process in the international arena? Do you think there is a need for something like that?
Well, definitely. There's already initiatives for the abolition of weaponized drones. There's international grassroots efforts to abolish weaponized drones, which I think would be wonderful to have a global treaty abolishing weaponized drones. Yes.
What other things do you think are, for example, this thing, what is it called? Who are those people who are in Guantanamo Bay? They are called some type of enemy combatant or something like that? I mean, the people who are considered, they're not national of any country, and anybody can go and grab them and put them anywhere they like.
Well, I think a special category was made for the people that were renditioned to Cuba to try to keep them from being covered by international law. I mean, to me, it's all a flim-flam. It's a joke. These are people often who weren't even combat people. They were turned in by informants who got money. So it's very doubtful that many of the people that have been in Guantanamo were actually even in any way an enemy of the United States military. I mean, there's very flimsy evidence about these people.
So is it? So I think along with the drone warfare, probably these type of kidnapping and purchasing so-called enemies and putting them in rendering, probably that is that covered in an international law?
Well, I think it is. Iman, I'm no expert on law at all, but I mean, prisoners of war, they're covered by the Geneva Conference rules. And so I think the United States says that they're not prisoners of war. There's some other category that it's created, legal sleight of hand. Um, and historically, the United States has been a very expansive empire, throughout the 19th century, expanding into, the western part of the United States, Mexico, so forth. And it's not really bound by international law very well. And there, of course, there isn't much enforcement of international law. The United States isn't even part of an international, court of justice. So international law is nice to, and we do in our trials, we cite international law. But the judges, nothing to them. It's just meaningless, apparently, because it doesn't get us anywhere to say that the United States is violating international law. To me, this is a rogue country, and it has been for generations.
So I think maybe we should have another show in which we talk about this particular thing, that role of international law, or whether international law is silent about a whole lot of new things which are happening. Um, Drone strikes you mentioned are conducted by CIA. I thought CIA is a spy agency. The fighting machine is with the Defense Department.
Well, it's the Defense Department. They call it the Defense Department. I mean, you could call it the War Department, but it's not only the Defense Department. It's other agencies like the CIA, which has very little accountability about it, and is a very clandestine organization, which I presume is quite active in Pakistan and elsewhere.
So it is. How do we know that CIA actually is operating drones?
Well, it is part of the mainstream media that has reported that this is happening, but then you have non-governmental agencies, human rights agencies that do their best to do research on these things.
Do you remember, did you watch any of those Democratic Party presidential candidates debating each other? Did any one of them talk about the drones attack, or targeted killing, or kidnapping of prisoners?
Well, Imam, there was very little foreign policy discussion in the debates that I heard. I mean, they kept it pretty much the domestic issues. So I think probably not, but of course I didn't watch every debate. It's such a murky issue for the U.S. public. We haven't been informed very well about this issue, or a lot of military issues, or a lot of foreign policy issues.
You're watching Muslim Network TV on Galaxy 19 satellite, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, whole lot of social media, and muslimnetwork.tv, our website, muslimnetwork.tv. And this is Imam Malik Mujahid talking with Ed Kinane, and we'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid. I'm talking with Ed Kinane. Ed, when and how did you become a peace activist? I mean, you go around protesting against drones, you protest against the occupation of Palestine, and a whole lot of other things. Is there a particular gene peace activists have?
I think some seem predisposed to it from birth and from upbringing. I had parents who were political on the local level, but not in the sense of showing an interest in analyzing foreign policy. My father also actually thought that Richard Nixon was a peacemaker. So I didn't get that family influence so strongly, but I have traveled quite a bit in the world, and that's opened my eyes. It's helped me get out of the bubble that most U.S. Americans grow up in. But I wasn't active until after I graduated from college. I mean, it was just very slow, gradual consciousness raising once I became an adult. I did get a boost when I went to a particular graduate program in anthropology at the New School for Social Research in New York City. And I think that helped me learn to think critically and politically. But then through my travels, I've traveled a great deal in Africa in particular, but also I've lived in some Islamic countries, and that helped me overcome the what I think is pretty intense Islamophobia here in this country, although probably very few U.S. Americans would even know the word and wouldn't be aware of how, like, the U.S. invasion of Iraq, Libya, support of Israel is just a raw, naked expression of Islamophobia. It's just not part of the
It's very rare that I hear someone describe these war to be a part of Islamophobia, and I appreciate that. I consider Islamophobia, war, and terror is a cycle, and dehumanization always precedes killing and doing those things to people. So I appreciate you saying that. So was the Iraq war the main think time when you got activated into the peace movement?
Well, no, I had been involved in a campaign called Close the School of the Americas down at Fort Benning, Georgia. And I still am, incidentally, but I was part of the national coordinating committee of that campaign, which was trying to close what we call the School of Torture at Fort Benning, Georgia, which trained Latin American military in anti-insurgency tactics, which is a nice way of saying terrorist tactics used against their own people for the sake of the oligarchy and the government in those countries, and for the U.S. corporations that have so much power in much of the rest of this hemisphere here. So I got involved. I had been involved in doing civil resistance or civil disobedience before that, but it really came to a head for me at Fort Benning, Georgia, doing civil resistance, which led to some prison terms in federal prison.
We'll talk about your prison terms, but tell us, is that protest still ongoing, or that campaign has died out?
Well, it's changed. It's, you know, at its peak a few years ago, 20,000 people would come and protest at Fort Benning, Georgia, which is just outside of Columbus, Georgia, in November. It was an annual event, and it grew from a handful of us to 20,000 over the years. Then I think other things happened. People got involved in other issues like the Iraq War and so forth. So that wasn't so much the current issue for a lot of people that came.
Tell me this. I mean, you, at the first thing you said when I asked you how you became a peace activist, how you got involved, you referred to your parents, right?
Mhm.
Are today's parents not doing their job? Because I don't see many young people in the peace movement.
Well, I mean, I feel that way too among our group where we tend to be older. We have octogenarians that are out there at, people 80 years old and older that are out there at Hancock Air Base holding the signs, very steadfast. But young people these days are caught up in like issues like Black Lives Matter, environmental issues, climate disaster. So I wouldn't write them off at all, but it's just, there are some generational differences here in the grassroots activism that I'm involved in. Now, let me mention this, that we go out to an affluent suburb of Syracuse every Friday afternoon with signs about Palestine, the occupation of Palestine. And the one I tend to carry often is Black and Palestinian Lives Matter. We get a lot of honks from passing, traffic. There's a lot of traffic. We get a lot of honks. So that's heartening.
How many people in supportive and how many people are opposing you when you stand in that corner? What is it called? Street heat?
Well, we call it street heat. This is our term for it. We've been doing it for 10 years now in connection with the drones out of Hancock Air Base. And then in the last, 2 or 3 years, connection with the Palestine occupation out in this DeWitt suburb. I can't say that, I mean, we want much more support than we got. So sometimes it feels discouraging. Sometimes, there's always just a handful of us doing it. Sometimes more, sometimes less. And we don't get much local media support either. That's discouraging. But the traffic flowing by, we're now getting a lot of honking cars, honking in support. We also get what's called F-bombs, and people throwing us the finger. But the great majority of responses are supportive.
Well, I was reading while preparing for this particular protest which you have on that street heat corner for Palestine. I heard that Jewish Federation of New York has formally written and tried to stop, and this group has been accused of anti-Semitism.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything which you have said which could be considered anti-Semitic?
Boy, I don't think so. But as you might know, the Jewish supporters of Israel are very ready to call any criticism of Israel anti-Semitic. It's a fake accusation. I've been to Israel. I spent time, on a kibbutz. I have a lot of goodwill toward, Jewish culture. I grew up respecting Jewish people and culture. I'm just really disgusted that the Jewish sensibilities are being totally run roughshod over by the Israeli government and the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, which I see as a gang of terrorists, who are occupying Palestinian territories. I mean, it's a very brutal, I've been in the West Bank and I've seen the brutality of it.
So what particular action is considered anti-Semitic action which you guys did?
Well, no particular action at all. It's sort of a free-floating.
Nobody pointed you out that this particular thing which you're doing is anti-Semitic?
Are you asking if someone's...
Yeah, in the letter or in conversation, did somebody point out to a particular slogan or a particular writing which was anti-Semitic?
No. what happened here with the local chapter of the Jewish Federation wrote a letter to one of the grassroots organizations locally that we're linked with, the Syracuse Peace Council, expressing dismay that we are out there. I think the word intimidating was used, intimidating Jewish people, which made us anti-Semitic. Now, I'm not quoting exactly, but this goes back a year or so. And they wanted to open up a dialogue with this organization. They didn't say anything about talking to us. And we're there. We're there every Friday. I'd love to have a conversation with people about these things. So it's here in the United States, as you might be aware, to be called anti-Semitic is very shameful. You know,
Well, it's very weaponized. I mean, it
for sure.
And worry about their jobs and things like that.
Yeah. No, I'm retired. You know, I don't have to worry about such things. So we just keep going out there every Friday.
So what was the response of the, the council, peace council, which you're part of? What did they say in response to that letter?
Well, I think they were a little embarrassed by us. So they didn't really consult very closely with the group of us that are out there. And so in there, they have a newsletter that comes out every couple of months. They kind of had some articles about anti-Semitism, but didn't run them by us for our analysis, even though we tend to know more about the situation than that group does, the rest of the group. So that felt a little embarrassing to me, that an opportunity to really explore anti-Semitism and Islamophobia was kind of missed by the group.
So what about you proactively writing your group, inviting those Jewish community leaders who are accusing you of anti-Semitism to have a dialogue? So invite the Syracuse Peace Council to be the moderators, and the Jewish community and those of you who are supporting Palestinian cause have a dialogue about that. Dialogue can lead to understanding.
Well, that could be done. And since they addressed the Peace Council, they didn't address us. I think it was for the Peace Council to try to organize that sort of thing. And I think they did try to talk with the Jewish Federation, but it wasn't something that really included us.
Yeah, I would love to see the Peace Council moderates a conversation on what particular thing you take your placards, and share your literature, and the Jewish Federation and the people who are saying you're anti-Semitic, they come and discuss what element of that is anti-Semitic, or they reach the agreement that you are using your First Amendment right in support of Palestinian cause, and there's nothing which you're saying is anti-Semitic. If the Federation doesn't learn anything, maybe Peace Council end up learning something about the truth.
Oh, well, the Peace Council is a long history of useful activism, but sometimes I think they might be a little too sensitive to local prejudice. I frankly think this whole thing was a real distraction. It came up when, yes, we were out there, but it also came up, I think, to distract from the issue of what the Israeli Defense Force was doing on the Gaza border, which is shooting people deliberately, unarmed people, nonviolent people deliberately, and maiming them deliberately. And there's a way, I think, of distracting from the real issue. I frankly am not eager to, I'd be glad if they stopped and talked. They've never stopped at our corner where we have our signs. Never once have those folks come by to chat. And boy, I'm open to that.
Let's talk about the, well, maybe you should have a placard say, we are willing to talk. If you disagree, stop by.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay. Now tell me this. You have been to prisons protesting drones. How many times have you been to prison?
Somewhere north of 50, 50. More than 50.
5 times, 10 times, 100 times,
No, 50.
50 times.
50.
Okay.
Yeah.
How much time you spend inside the prison system?
Well, it varies. I mean, the longest was a year. The next was 2 months. Several.
Okay. So when you spent a year, was it recently or a long time ago?
It was quite a while ago. It was when was it? In the mid or late 90s.
Hmm. So what was the situation of prison system at that time? What was your experience about the prison system and how other prisoners took you?
Well, I was at a minimum security prison, which is like the lowest grade of security. I mean, there weren't walls, there wasn't barbed wire, the guards didn't have guns, but if you walked away, you'd be in prison for a lot longer. So very few prisoners would walk away. Actually, in the federal system, the food wasn't too bad. There was even a salad bar for we vegetarians. So I thought of it as soft time. I was able to do a lot of reading. It was like a sabbatical. Now, that's very different from the state prisons and the local jails and medium security federal prisons and high security. Very different. So my experience, wasn't very typical, really.
So it means the peace activists, when they are in prison, they are giving a softer type of prison sentences?
Typically, but if you're charged, I was charged with a felony, but it wasn't a violent felony. I had, and some friends, put bloody handprints on the sign at the entrance of Fort Benning, Georgia. And it said SOA, which is the abbreviation for School of the Americas, equals torture. And they got a local contractor to clean up what we had done. And the local contractor submitted a bill for over $1,000, which made it a felony. Now we know that our bloody handprint just washed off. So in a sense, we were framed. I mean, it really shouldn't have been a felony. So I spent all those months in prison, I was framed. It was a very unfair prison sentence. However, I adapted very well to prison. I got along fine because I love to read and a lot of time to read. I didn't have to worry about dependents. Didn't have to worry about a career. I had a lot of support locally. I got a lot of media attention, even from our local paper, which won't pay much attention to what we're doing out at Fort Benning, out at Hancock Air Base. And in fact, what we do at Hancock Air Base near Syracuse is kind of modeled after what we were doing at Fort Benning, Georgia, to try to close the School of the Americas. There's a lot of similarities there.
So is it the different timing that they did not pay attention now as compared to earlier?
Well, I think the key thing is that here, central New York, Syracuse, New York, is dazzled by the thought of all this drone industry coming here. So it hits very close to home. They don't want to publicize the fact that drones are being criticized, they're being resisted. Whereas Fort Benning, Georgia is like 1,200 miles away from Syracuse. So it's easy to pat someone on the back. They're doing something, far away.
Okay, so it's the same thing what had happened. Drones are killing in Afghanistan. That's okay because far away.
Very far away.
It's okay. You're a hero far away, but when you do something close to home, forget about it. Well, Ed Kinane, thank you so much for you being a peacemaker, and I hope you will prepare the next generation of the street heat people, and more people realize that, well, you may not buy into the truth, but truth cannot be shut down. So thank you so much for your work. I appreciate that.
And thank you, Iman, for this opportunity to talk.
Thank you.
Well, I think it's a very important issue.
Thank you. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and I have been talking with Ed Kinane, who is a peace activist. You are watching Muslim Network TV on Galaxy 19 satellite, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, Roku, many social media, and we are always there on all these platforms 24/7 with a unique conversation, which you can only find on Muslim TV, muslimnetwork.tv. That is muslimnetwork.tv. Peace. Salam.
Peace.